A lavish charity auction in Los Angeles. Crystal chandeliers reflected off the marble floor. The young billionaire, Arya Han, a real estate CEO known for her sharp tongue, stormed onto the stage. She'd just been informed a catering member spilled wine on her bespoke gown. She coolly tossed a napkin onto the face of the man, kneeling to clean the stain. "Apologize in Korean, service staff," she demanded, voice dripping with ice. "If you can manage it, I'll give you $2 billion. The entire room erupted in laughter. The man looked up. Daniel, a single dad, his eyes calm. He stood up slowly and spoke a single, flawless sentence of native Korean. The room froze. Daniel Park, 36, was a man perpetually running on fumes. A dedicated single father, he meticulously juggled 3 jobs: a rideshare driver by morning, an event server by night, and a beloved private tutor specializing in Asian languages for children on the weekends. His life was a precise, often painful calculation of hours and dollars, all aimed at one purpose: his 6-year-old son, Noah. Noah was Daniel's most precious investment, a curious boy who loved poring over world maps and listening to cultural stories every night before bed. He was Daniel's anchor and his reason for enduring the daily grind. Tonight, Daniel was serving at the Han Group's prestigious charity auction, a vortex of obscene wealth. The air was thick with the scent of old money, expensive perfume, and effortless power. For Daniel, this was just another job. Stay silent, keep moving, and earn enough to cover the looming tuition bill for Noah's specialized science class next semester. The incident that changed everything was chaotic and fast. Daniel was navigating the densely packed crowd with a heavy silver tray of Cabernet Sauvignon. A highly distracted VIP guest, gesticulating wildly about a painting, violently smacked the edge of the tray. The VIP, a renowned Silicon Valley investor, barely registered the collision. Wine sprayed, splattering a dark red stain onto the immaculate, custom-made white designer dress of Arya Han. It was unquestionably the VIP's blunder, clearly visible from multiple angles, but the crowd, instinctively protecting one of their own, immediately pointed the finger at Daniel. He was the low-status element, the one who looked like the easiest person to blame. Their voices were dismissive, creating a hostile wall around the event server. Arya Han, who had been chatting with a major European client, turned slowly. The sight of the ruined dress, a piece commissioned from a Parisian fashion house, ignited her famous icy fury. She didn't bother with an initial accusation, only a chilling query, her voice amplified by the sudden silence. "Where did you crawl out from? And are you even capable of operating a simple tray?" Daniel immediately bowed low, the polished movement a professional reflex. "I sincerely apologize for the disturbance, madam, but I assure you, the initial contact was made by—" Arya cut him off, her voice laced with venom. "Stop right there. Do you have any idea how much this garment cost? Not the price tag, but the cost of the time I wasted having it fitted? Your wages for a year wouldn't cover the embroidery." The surrounding guests immediately piled on, their voices a cruel, familiar symphony of class prejudice. What would a service worker know about value? Just blacklist his agency and get him out of here. Daniel stood silently, swallowing the bitter pill of public humiliation. He knew that arguing with immense power, even when grounded in truth, was an exercise in futility. His priority was to survive the moment without further damage. Arya narrowed her eyes, studying his worn service uniform, the lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes, and the quiet dignity in his posture that refused to crumble. She wanted to humiliate him, not just dismiss him. "You look like the type of person who wouldn't be able to utter a decent word in my mother's tongue." "It's too complex for your level," she stated, referring to the Korean language, the foundation of her family's formidable empire. Daniel, tired of being judged and dismissed based solely on his uniform, finally lifted his gaze. His response was dangerously calm, shattering the professional deference. "I will apologize in any language you choose, madam. I insist on it." Arya let out a sharp, theatrical laugh. The guests leaned in, anticipating the brutal takedown of the low-status worker. "Korean, then," she challenged, crossing her arms, emphasizing the difficulty. "And to make this worth my ruined evening, here's the bet. Say it correctly with native educated fluency, and I will personally transfer $2 billion to your account right now. Deal? The guests roared with laughter, treating the offer as a ridiculous joke, a public demonstration of the billionaire's power to mock and dismiss a nobody. Daniel did not laugh. His gaze was steady, meeting her fierce, arrogant eyes without flinching. He spoke quietly, his voice cutting through the noise. Are you absolutely certain about the terms, madam? $2 billion is a substantial sum, even for you. Arya scoffed, rolling her eyes. Just say it, server, or admit defeat. Daniel took a light, almost imperceptible breath, the kind of stillness that precedes a seismic event. Then he spoke. 저의 무례함이 이 밤의 우아함을 해쳤습니다. 이 순간 저의 진심 어린 사과를 받으시고 귀한 분의 관용을 베풀어 주십시오. My discourtesy damaged the elegance of this evening. Please accept my sincere apology at this moment and grant your noble tolerance. His accent was flawless, his vocabulary highly refined, echoing the formal, sophisticated Korean, spoken in the highest echelons of Seoul's corporate and diplomatic world. The entire hall went instantly, profoundly silent. Every single jaw dropped, and Daniel, still standing in his cheap uniform, simply waited for the transfer. One of the witnesses later shared this account on social media. I have never seen a room full of the wealthiest people in LA utterly silenced and then slowly humiliated by a catering server. The silence was louder than the orchestra. When he spoke, it was like the room's power grid failed. Arya Han's composure cracked completely. The hand holding her wine glass, the glass she had bet $2 billion on, trembled violently. Her face cycled rapidly through disbelief, confusion, and raw, incandescent embarrassment. That was not just fluent Korean, it was the language of her father's boardroom. What is your background? Where did you acquire that level of refinement? She stammered, her voice stripped of its confident, metallic edge. Daniel, without raising his voice, delivered the next bombshell. I hold a PhD in comparative linguistics. I completed my field research in Seoul for 5 years. I spent 3 years in Tokyo and 4 years teaching at various universities across Europe before returning to the US to focus on my son. The murmuring in the crowd swelled into a fever pitch of astonishment. A PhD is serving drinks? This is impossible. He's a spy. An investment banker, trying desperately to find a flaw in the diamond, challenged him loudly. All right, doctor, then speak French. Let's hear your Parisian flair. Daniel instantly shifted, his French pronunciation impeccable and elegant. His reply was a sophisticated, minute-long discourse on the current socio-linguistic impact of globalization on French language purity, referencing a contemporary philosopher. Several French guests nodded in grudging admiration. A stern-looking German industrialist, red-faced, barked, German now! Explain the principles of eigenkapital in German. Daniel responded in rapid, flawless German that sounded like a broadcast from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, detailing the nuances of equity capital in Mittelstand companies. A middle-aged Japanese philanthropist, known for his formality, raised his hand. Japanese, please. Explain the concept of hana and tatamai. Daniel's answer was delivered with such profound cultural deference, flawless honorifics, and deep philosophical insight that the 2 native Japanese attendees in the hall immediately bowed low, recognizing the intellectual and cultural respect in his language. The challenges continued, now fueled by a desperate desire to expose him as a fraud. A Russian guest demanded, Russian! Translate Pushkin's famous stanza. Daniel not only translated the stanza, but analyzed the rhythmic structure and historical context of the poem in fluid Russian. A Spanish art dealer, laughing nervously, tried, Spanish! Debate the influence of Goya's black paintings on surrealism. Daniel replied with a passionate, eloquent argument in Castilian Spanish. Arya was visibly shaking. Her initial arrogance was utterly dissolved into profound, crushing bewilderment. She finally managed to articulate a coherent question, her voice quiet and strangely vulnerable. Who, in the name of God, are you truly? And why are you doing this to us? Daniel offered a small, weary smile, a powerful contrast to his multilingual prowess. He spoke English again, calmly and clearly. I am simply Daniel Park, a single father who needs cash flow to ensure his son's success. That's all. His answer, starkly honest and devoid of any academic ego, silenced the room once more. The image of the highly decorated polyglot who chose manual labor for immediate cash was a powerful indictment of their society's values. Aria looked deep into his eyes, a direct, unfiltered gaze. She saw a quiet strength that transcended her billions. Then, why are you working as a server, Dr. Park? Your PhD should open every door. Daniel's answer hit her with the weight of reality. Because a temporary teaching contract or consulting gig takes months to finalize. It provides slow payment. Manual labor pays me cash tonight. I need that cash now to pay for my son's specialized tuition next week. I cannot afford to wait for a salary to kick in. Arya's chest tightened with a powerful mix of guilt, embarrassment, and reluctant admiration. The man standing before her defied every privileged assumption she held about life and labor. She took a hesitant step forward, her voice filled with remorse. I should not have insulted you, Dr. Park. I judged you based entirely on your uniform. I don't hold grudges, Madam Han. Do you think I still owe you $2 billion and an apology? Daniel chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that momentarily relaxed the atmosphere. The $2 billion was a bet. We can discuss the transfer later. The apology is more important. Arya took a deep, humbling breath. She stood tall, then slowly, deliberately, lowered her head in a formal, 90-degree bow, the deepest gesture of respect in her culture, in the presence of the world's elite. She spoke a complete sentence of formal, apologetic Korean. 저의 경솔함에 대해 진심으로 사과드립니다. 당신의 인격에 대해 제가 얼마나 잘못 판단했는지 깨닫습니다. I sincerely apologize for my thoughtlessness. I realize how deeply I misjudged your character. Daniel, his inherent kindness overriding the spectacle, gently took a clean, warm cloth from a passing tray and helped her gently dab the remaining red wine stain from her shoulder. Arya looked up at him, her eyes shining with profound remorse, confusion, and overwhelming curiosity. The photographer who captured the moment recounted. The instant she bowed and apologized, the massive hall became completely silent. It felt like a cathedral. The CEO's humility toward a man she'd insulted was a powerful shift. She looked utterly stripped bare. The next day, the internet broke. The clip of CEO Han humiliated by a polyglot waiter went instantly viral, hitting every major news outlet in Asia and North America. The media narrative was brutal, universally editing the footage to make Arya look arrogant, foolish, and culturally bankrupt. The headlines were savage. The Emperor's new clothes. Han Group CEO exposed as ignorant. Arya's board of directors was in a frenzy. Her chief compliance officer was demanding she issue a retraction. Her father called from Seoul, his voice tight with disappointment and anger. Arya, you've turned a charity event into a global laughingstock. You made the VIP guests feel insulted. Your lack of judgment and control is astonishing. We need to control this narrative now. Arya, sitting alone in her lavish penthouse, was furious, not at Daniel, but at the system that perpetuated the prejudice. Meanwhile, Daniel's world suffered the predictable corporate fallout. Despite his public grace, he received an immediate termination notice from the event management company for creating an unauthorized spectacle, causing a security risk, and attracting inappropriate media attention. The agency needed to appease its powerful clients. Daniel sighed, running a tired hand through his hair as he read the pink slip. Another job gone, another income stream terminated. He didn't blame anyone. Corporate ecosystems prioritize stability and status quo over truth and justice. He arrived home that evening, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. He still hadn't collected the $2 billion, and now he had to find another job to cover the tuition. Suddenly, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside his modest apartment building. Arya emerged, dressed down in a simple cashmere sweater and jeans, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, looking exhausted but determined. She was alone, without her usual security or retinue. Daniel opened the door, his surprise evident. Madam Han, why are you here? This is a very public risk for you. Arya handed him the termination letter, her jaw tight. I know you lost your job because of me. My company's fear of PR is not your burden to carry. Daniel gently took the letter, shaking his head. It's not just you, Lexi. It's the rule. They needed a quiet scapegoat to appease the power brokers. It's just how the system works. Arya's eyes swept over the small, worn apartment, the spotless but ancient stove, the crowded bookcase, the small study desk tucked into the corner where Noah's world map was tacked above a pile of colored pencils. You live like this? With a PhD and 9 languages, you live under this constant pressure, sacrificing health insurance and job stability for immediate cash flow? Daniel's response was simple and proud. I don't have time for instability. If I get sick, who takes care of Noah? If I wait for a 6-figure consulting contract, Noah starves now. Noah and I are more than fine. We are happy. Noah, hearing the new voice, rushed out, his curiosity overcoming his shyness. Daddy, who is this? She smells like strawberries. Daniel smiled, the tension momentarily easing. This is a very important friend, son. She's named Arya. Arya knelt immediately, her stern CEO facade melting into genuine tenderness as she looked at the young boy. Hello, Noah. Your daddy is the smartest man I have ever met. Arya stood up, her voice trembling slightly as she turned back to Daniel. Daniel, I need to correct this. This injustice is unbearable to me. I need to make amends. Daniel, hardened by years of surviving on his own terms, was firm. You don't need to. But I want to. I cannot sleep knowing I destroyed your job and knowing that you saved my reputation. I am legally bound to transfer the $2 billion to you immediately, and I will. But that's not enough. She extended a formal business card, a plain white card with only her name. I want to hire you as the Chief Language and Cultural Advisor for the Han Group. I will pay you a salary that will eliminate the need for 3 jobs and guarantee your and Noah's financial security for life. Daniel looked at the card, then back at her, his gaze unwavering. I appreciate the offer, Lexi, but I refuse to accept career advancement born out of pity or guilt. That's a handout, not a partnership. Arya choked up, genuinely stung. You think this is pity? Daniel nodded, his eyes unflinching. You feel intensely guilty, so you want to compensate me with wealth. I understand that impulse, but I am not a broken object you can fix with money. That is not what I need from you. After a long, uncomfortable silence, Arya finally asked, her voice small and defeated, Then what, Daniel? What do you actually need from me? Daniel's answer was instantaneous and profound, striking at the core of her identity. I need your respect. I need you to recognize that my worth is not determined by the job I hold, but by the dignity I maintain while doing it. The statement shattered Arya's remaining defenses. The next morning, Arya returned to the battlefield, the executive board meeting. The server incident yesterday. I was wrong, she announced, her voice powerful and commanding. I judged a man by his uniform, not his credentials. I judged him by his poverty, not his character. And I refuse to continue as CEO if I lead this company with such ingrained, classist arrogance. The room was in absolute shock. Arya continued, I want to hire Dr. Daniel Park as the head of international communication and language development, effective immediately. The board members exploded in outrage. A server? As a department head? Are you insane, Arya? What about the PR risk? The financial world will laugh at us. Arya stood up, her gaze sweeping the hostile room. He holds a PhD. He speaks 9 languages fluently. He is the only person in this room who understands the cultural nuances needed to save our Japanese and German deals right now. And he possesses something none of you have, unbreakable dignity and humility. The meeting room fell silent, defeated by the weight of her conviction and the threat of her resignation. Later that day, Daniel was summoned to the Han Group headquarters. He walked through the pristine marble lobby in his clean but old shirt, the silent employees watching him with a mixture of confusion and awe. When he stepped into the executive conference room, Arya was the first to rise from the table. Welcome, Daniel. We need you. Daniel looked at the hostile faces of the board members, then back at the woman who had risked her empire for his dignity. He finally said, I am not sure I belong here. I don't trust this world. Arya's reply was absolute, sealing their fate. I do, and I need you here to teach me how to trust people again. And that was the moment everything changed. Daniel began his new role, and his impact was immediate and transformative. Within the first 2 weeks, he successfully navigated two high-stakes negotiations, one with a German industrialist who appreciated Daniel's precise German and direct, respectful manner, and another with a traditional Japanese family corporation that was instantly won over by Daniel's flawless cultural understanding and honorifics. He wasn't just a translator, he was a strategic asset, a cultural bridge builder. But despite the six-figure salary, Daniel insisted on maintaining his simple, dedicated life. He still drove Noah to school every morning in his old car, still cooked dinner at home, and still dedicated his evenings to his son. Araya found excuses to visit Daniel's office multiple times a day, always masked as professional necessity. Daniel, are you free? I need you to explain the difference in dialect when negotiating with the Beijing branch versus the Shanghai one. Could you help me understand how a German board meeting differs from a Korean one? I'm trying to improve my interpersonal skills. Her questions were always genuine, reflecting a desperate desire to learn from him. She wasn't seeking his linguistic skill anymore. She was seeking his character. The conversation naturally drifted away from business. Arya started asking about Noah, about his science class, about what it was like to be a single parent. You are incredible, Daniel. I don't know how you manage to maintain your focus and sanity. You learn to prioritize, he replied, stacking papers neatly. The paper trail never ends, but Noah's childhood does. So I pick him up at 4 p.m. sharp. The work waits. My father, Arya murmured one afternoon, her gaze distant, always told me the work could never wait. I spent my whole life waiting for his approval, which only came through success. Approval is internal, Lexi, not external, Daniel said gently. She began to join them for occasional informal dinners. One evening, she watched Daniel effortlessly switch from helping Noah with a complex Lego design to discussing global finance with her. She watched the pure, unfiltered joy in Noah's eyes as he spoke to his father. You're the best parent I've ever encountered, she confessed over simple pasta. You give him something my money could never buy. Present stability. Daniel shrugged, his face softening with affection for his son. Just trying to be good enough every day. That's all any of us can do. Arya looked around the small, comfortable, and loving apartment, a stark contrast to her cold, expansive penthouse. The gap between the delivery man and the CEO was completely gone, replaced by mutual respect and a burgeoning tenderness. One late night, after working late on a difficult Japanese contract, Arya asked him, her voice barely a whisper, echoing the profound question from the auction. Daniel, do you hate me? Even a little bit, for how I treated you? No, he repeated, looking her directly in the eye. Do you still think I'm arrogant? A little, he admitted honestly, but you're trying harder than anyone I know to shed that skin. That's true humility. Arya looked down at her hands, which still held the immense power of her family's empire. I want to change because I saw myself through your eyes, and I want to be worthy of the respect you showed me. Daniel paused, the air suddenly charged with an emotion that had nothing to do with work. He reached out and gently took her hand, the calloused skin meeting the soft skin of the billionaire. Her confession was sincere, raw, and utterly beautiful. You're already worthy, Lexi. You just needed a reminder that your worth is not in the billions you have, but in the dignity you choose to show others. From this day forward, I vow to see people by their inherent worth, not their position. I will live kindly. At the end of the year, the Han Group hosted its most extravagant event yet, the annual Christmas Gala. The theme was opulence, and the crowd was the same: the Silicon Valley investors, the German industrialists, and the powerful board members who had witnessed the dramatic humiliation months earlier. Daniel brought Noah to the party. He was dressed in a well-fitting, simple suit, a man who looked entirely comfortable in his own skin, despite the immense wealth surrounding him. But as they entered the grand hall, he was surprised to see Arya waiting for them in the main glittering lobby. She wore a breathtaking, custom-made ruby red gown, The dramatic lighting and her genuine, relaxed smile made her look like a figure stepping out of a romantic fairy tale, far removed from the cold CEO of the past. Arya walked straight to Daniel, her eyes locked on his. She didn't hesitate. She took his hand, holding it tightly, right in front of the entire stunned board of directors and the media cameras. "This is Dr. Daniel Park," she announced, her voice clear and proud. "The man who saved my reputation and the most valuable asset this company has." Noah, dressed in a tiny tuxedo, broke away and ran to Arya, throwing his arms around her waist. "Arya, are you my dad's official girlfriend now? Please say yes." Daniel flushed crimson with embarrassment, trying to pull his son back. Arya laughed, a clear, joyous sound. She knelt down, meeting Noah's eyes with genuine tenderness, ignoring the 100 curious stares. "If your daddy is finally ready to agree, Noah, then yes, I am absolutely ready." Daniel swallowed hard, tears unexpectedly welling up in his eyes. He looked at the woman who had publicly risked her career, who had humbled herself, and who had chosen his quiet, loving life over the endless pursuit of external validation. "Arya, are you sure? This is a huge change. You'd be choosing us over so much." Arya stood up, reaching for his face, her eyes shining with profound conviction. "I haven't been sure about anything in my entire life, Daniel, but I am absolutely sure about this. The $2 billion was nothing. Finding you and Noah, that is the only wealth that matters." Noah shrieked with delight, jumping up and down. "So I have a new family now, Dad? And Arya will read me stories?" Daniel pulled his son into a fierce hug, then wrapped his arms around Arya. For the first time, there was no longer a difference between the single dad and the CEO. There was only a family, created not by wealth, but by a simple act of dignity and an unexpected bet. The board members, watching the raw, pure emotion, realized that the proud, fierce CEO had finally found her peace. That Christmas Eve, the three of them stood briefly under a light snowfall outside the party venue, their laughter echoing the quiet joy of found belonging. It was as if destiny had orchestrated the wine spill, the humiliation, and the long, difficult path, simply to bring them to this moment of simple, profound love. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.